The morning sun cut across Fort Bragg like a blade, sharp and unforgiving. North Carolina heat already thick at 0600, the kind that made uniforms stick and tempers flare. The sniper training facility sprawled across 200 acres of pine and red clay, home to the most elite marksmen the United States Army could produce. And on this particular morning in June 2024, it was about to meet Ravenna Blackwood. She stood 5'3" in her boots, dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun so tight it could have been painted on, green eyes that held something old, something that didn't match the smooth skin of 28 years. She carried a single duffel bag over one shoulder, standard issue, nothing special. Her uniform was crisp, her posture was perfect, and every single one of the 18 male recruits waiting on the parade ground was already laughing. Not out loud, not yet, but in their eyes, in the way they looked at each other, in the subtle shake of heads, and the ghost of smirks they tried to hide. Sergeant Flint Morrison stood at the front, 40 years old, built like a linebacker who'd traded the field for the desert. 2 tours in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq. A scar that ran from his left ear to his collarbone, courtesy of shrapnel from an IED outside Kandahar. He held a clipboard like it was a weapon. "Blackwood," he called out, voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "Ravenna Blackwood." She stepped forward, 1 step, perfect form. Her boots hit the ground with precision. "Yes, Sergeant." Morrison's eyes narrowed. He looked down at his clipboard, then back up at her. His jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. "Blackwood," he said again, slower this time. "That name mean anything to you recruits?" Silence. Then one hand went up. Corporal Brock Hawthorne, 24 years old, former infantry, shoulders like an ox and a grin that said he'd never met a mirror he didn't like. "Sir, Colonel Thaddeus Blackwood, Fort Bragg legend, served in Desert Storm with Black Viper." The name hung in the air like smoke. Morrison nodded once. "That's right, the Colonel Blackwood." His eyes moved back to Ravenna. "You related?" "He's my father, Sergeant." The laughter started then. Not loud, not disrespectful enough to draw discipline, just a ripple, a wave of amusement that rolled through the ranks like wind through wheat. Hawthorne's grin widened. "So you got in through nepotism? Outstanding! That's exactly what this program needs." Morrison's hand came up, sharp, final. The laughter died. "Stow it, Corporal." He looked at Ravenna again. Something in his expression shifted. Not quite sympathy, more like recognition of a problem he didn't want to deal with. "You understand what you're walking into here, Blackwood?" "Yes, Sergeant." "Do you?" He took a step closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "This isn't West Point. This isn't some classroom where you write papers about tactical theory. This is where we train men to put rounds on target from distances that would make your eyes bleed. Men who've been in the sandbox, who've had bullets snap past their heads, who've seen what happens when you miss." Ravenna said nothing. Morrison waited. 5 seconds. 10. The silence stretched like a rubber band about to break.
Nothing to say?
"No, Sergeant." He exhaled hard through his nose, turned away, addressed the formation. "Listen up. Fort Bragg Sniper School. 8 weeks. You will learn long-range marksmanship, fieldcraft, camouflage, reconnaissance, target detection, and range estimation. You will learn to shoot in rain, wind, heat, and cold. You will learn to shoot exhausted, hungry, and scared. And at the end of 8 weeks, 60% of you will fail." He paced, boots crunching on gravel. "The 60% who fail will go back to their units with a black mark on their records and a story about how they almost made it. The 40% who pass will become some of the most valuable assets the United States Army possesses." He stopped, turned, looked directly at Ravenna. "But understand this, I don't care who your father is. I don't care what academy you graduated from. I don't care if you can recite the ballistics tables for every round we fire. If you can't put steel on target when it counts, you're gone." "Yes, Sergeant." Hawthorne raised his hand again. "What, Corporal?" "Just wondering, Sergeant, has a woman ever graduated this course?" Morrison's face could have been carved from stone. "No." "Thought so." Hawthorne looked at Ravenna. Not hostile, almost friendly. The way you'd look at someone about to walk off a cliff while you took bets on how they'd land. "No offense, ma'am, just statistics." Ravenna met his eyes, held them, said nothing. And that silence, that absolute refusal to engage, was the first thing that made Hawthorne's smile falter. The barracks were cinder block and fluorescent lights, 12 bunks, 12 lockers, one latrine at the end of the hall that smelled like industrial cleaner and regret. The men had already claimed their spaces by the time Ravenna walked in. They'd left her the bunk by the door, the one where every person coming or going would wake her up, the one where the light from the hallway would slice across her face all night. She set her duffel on the thin mattress, unzipped it, began unpacking with the same mechanical precision she did everything else. Behind her, 3 recruits watched. Hawthorne, a tall man named Garrett Pierce with a Kentucky drawl and hands that looked like they could crush cinder blocks. A wiry kid named Danny Ortiz, who couldn't have been more than 21. "So," Hawthorne said, leaning against his bunk, "Daddy's little princess, how's it feel knowing everyone here thinks you only got in because of your last name?" Ravenna folded a shirt, placed it in her locker. Perfect right angles. "I'm not asking to be mean," Hawthorne continued. "Just curious. Like, does that motivate you? Make you want to prove something? Or do you figure you'll coast through on the family name and nobody'll call you on it because they're afraid of pissing off the colonel?" She folded another shirt. Pierce shifted his weight. "Leave her alone, Brock." "I'm not doing anything. I'm asking questions. It's called getting to know your fellow soldiers." Hawthorne smiled. "Besides, she can speak for herself. Can't you, Blackwood?" Ravenna closed her locker, turned, looked at him. For a moment, just a flicker, something moved behind her eyes. Something that made Hawthorne's smile freeze. Something cold and deep and very, very old. Then it was gone. "Yes, Corporal," she said quietly. "I can speak for myself." "So? So what? So how's it feel?" She tilted her head slightly, like she was genuinely considering the question, like it mattered. "It feels," she said, "like I have something to prove, just like everyone else here." Hawthorne laughed. "Right, except everyone else here actually earned their slot." "You're right," Ravenna said. "They did." And she walked out. The 3 men looked at each other. "That was weird," Ortiz said. Hawthorne frowned. "What was weird about it?" "She agreed with you." "So?" "So," Ortiz shrugged. "I don't know. It felt wrong." Pierce grabbed his towel. "You're overthinking it. She's just smart enough to know when she's outnumbered." He headed for the latrine. "Give her 3 days. She'll quit." Hawthorne watched the door where Ravenna had disappeared. The frown didn't leave his face. "Yeah," he said, "probably." But he didn't sound convinced. Day 1 was orientation, paperwork, safety briefings, medical checks, the kind of administrative tedium that military bureaucracy excelled at. Ravenna sat through it all in silence, answered questions when asked, volunteered nothing. Day 2 was equipment issue. Each recruit received an M24 sniper weapon system, 7.62 NATO caliber, bolt action, effective range of 800 meters in the right hands. These were training rifles, worn smooth by years of use, but still deadly accurate. Each man took his weapon with the kind of reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. Ravenna took hers with both hands, checked the chamber, checked the bolt, ran her fingers down the barrel with a touch so light it could have been a prayer. Morrison watched her, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "Something wrong with that rifle, Blackwood?" No, Sergeant. Then why are you fondling it like it's made of glass? Just checking the condition, Sergeant. Uh-huh. He stepped closer. You ever fired an M24 before? No, Sergeant. But you've fired a rifle? Yes, Sergeant. What kind? A pause, brief, almost imperceptible. Macmillan TAC-50, Sergeant. Morrison's eyebrows went up. The Macmillan TAC-50 wasn't a training rifle. It wasn't even a standard military rifle. It was a precision instrument, 50 caliber, effective range of nearly 2,000 meters. The kind of weapon that costs more than most recruits made in 6 months. Where the hell did you fire a TAC-50? My father has one, Sergeant. He taught me to shoot when I was 6. Hawthorne, 3 stations down, barked a laugh. Oh, this is rich. Daddy's gun. Daddy's legacy. Daddy's everything. Tell me, Princess, did Daddy also teach you how to change your own oil? Or do you have people for that too? Ravenna didn't look at him. She was field stripping the M24 now. Bolt out, magazine well clear, trigger assembly exposed. Her hands moved with absolute confidence. Morrison noticed. His eyes narrowed. Blackwood. Yes, Sergeant. Reassemble that weapon. She did. 37 seconds. No wasted movement. No hesitation. When she was done, she performed a functions check. Dry-fired once. The action was smooth as silk. Morrison took the rifle from her hands, examined it, handed it back. You've done that before. Yes, Sergeant. How many times? Ravenna's eyes met his, and for just a moment, Morrison saw something there that made his breath catch. Not defiance, not pride, something deeper, something that looked like grief. Every day since I was 16, Sergeant. Morrison opened his mouth, closed it, nodded once. Carry on. As Ravenna moved to the next station, Hawthorne leaned over to Pierce. Did you see that? See what? The way she stripped that rifle. That wasn't academy training, that was... What? Hawthorne frowned. I don't know, but it was something. Day 3, the range. This was where theory met reality, where 18 recruits would fire their first rounds and discover whether they had the hands, the eyes, and the nerves for this job. The morning was hot, the kind of heat that rose in waves off the red clay, distorting the air, making the targets at 300 meters shimmer like mirages. Perfect conditions for learning how atmospheric conditions affected bullet trajectory. Morrison stood at the firing line, hands behind his back, voice carrying across the range like a drill sergeant's prayer. Marksmanship is not about strength, it's not about aggression, it's about patience, discipline, and respect for the weapon in your hands. Every shot you take is a conversation between you, your rifle, and the laws of physics. And if you don't speak that language fluently, you'll miss. And in combat, missing gets people killed. He paced the line. Today you'll fire from 300 meters. Prone position, 5 rounds. Take your time. Focus on fundamentals. Breathing, trigger control, follow through. I don't care if you hit the bullseye. I care if you understand why you missed. 18 recruits settled into position. 18 rifles pointed downrange. 17 of them fired. Ravenna didn't. She lay in the dirt, eye to the scope, finger resting alongside the trigger guard. Not on the trigger, alongside. Her breathing was steady. 4 beats in, hold, 4 beats out. Her body was perfectly still, but she didn't shoot. Morrison walked past her, stopped, looked down. Problem, Blackwood? No, Sergeant. Then why aren't you firing? Observing, Sergeant. Observing what? Wind patterns, heat distortion, how the mirage affects sight picture. Morrison's jaw tightened. This is a live fire exercise, not a meteorology class. Yes, Sergeant. So fire your weapon. Ravenna's finger moved to the trigger, curled around it, applied pressure, then stopped. I'd rather not, Sergeant. The words fell like stones. Morrison crouched beside her. When he spoke, his voice was low. dangerous. Private Blackwood, I just gave you a direct order. Fire your weapon. She turned her head, looked at him, and in her eyes was something Morrison had seen before. In the eyes of men who'd been in combat, who'd taken lives and been marked by it. I've shot before, Sergeant, she said quietly, but I don't want to repeat it if I'm not ready. Ready for what? For what comes after the trigger. Morrison stared at her. The range around them seemed to fall away. The crack of rifles, the calls of "target" from the spotters, all of it became background noise. Get up, he said finally. Ravenna stood. You're dismissed from today's exercise. Report to equipment maintenance. You'll clean every rifle on this range before evening formation. Yes, Sergeant. As she walked away, Hawthorne lowered his rifle, looked at Morrison. Sergeant? She refused a direct order. Shouldn't she be? Stow it, Corporal. But I said stow it. Morrison watched Ravenna's retreating back. His expression was complicated, troubled. Pierce sidled up next to Hawthorne. What the hell was that about? I have no idea, Hawthorne shook his head. But did you hear what she said? I don't want to repeat it. Repeat what? She's never been in combat. Maybe she's just scared. That wasn't fear. Hawthorne's frown deepened. That was something else. For 2 weeks, it continued. Ravenna Blackwood attended every class, passed every written exam with perfect scores, could recite ballistics tables from memory, calculate windage and elevation adjustments faster than most recruits could use their calculators. In physical training, she kept pace with men twice her size, never complained, never fell behind. But she never fired a shot. On the range, she observed, took notes, helped other recruits with their form, their breathing, their trigger discipline. She cleaned rifles until they gleamed, maintained equipment with obsessive care, arrived an hour before everyone else and left an hour after. And the men began to notice something strange. When Ravenna checked a rifle, it performed better. Tighter groups, fewer jams, as if her hands somehow understood the weapons at a level that went beyond technical knowledge. When she suggested a grip adjustment to Ortiz, his accuracy improved by 30%. When she mentioned to Pierce that he was jerking the trigger instead of squeezing it, his groups tightened from 6 inches to 2. She never pushed, never lectured, just offered quiet observations in that calm voice, and somehow the men found themselves listening, even Hawthorne. I don't get it, he said one evening in the barracks. She won't shoot, but she knows everything about shooting. How does that work? Garrett Pierce was cleaning his rifle. Again. 3rd time that day. Ever since Ravenna had shown him how to properly clean the bolt carrier group, he'd become obsessed with maintenance. Maybe she's just a good teacher, he said. Teachers shoot. Not all of them. Name one sniper instructor who doesn't shoot. Pierce didn't have an answer for that. Ortiz looked up from his bunk. You guys notice her hands? What about them? Watch next time she handles a rifle. Really watch. The way she checks the chamber. The way she seats the magazine. The way she cycles the bolt. He shook his head. That's not academy training. That's muscle memory. The kind you get from doing something 10,000 times. Hawthorne considered this. So what? Her old man taught her well. Doesn't mean she can actually shoot. Then why won't she? Because she can't, Hawthorne said flatly. It's obvious. She talks a good game, knows the theory, but when it comes time to actually perform, she folds. Classic case of choking. But even as he said it, he didn't sound convinced, because choking looked like panic, like hesitation, like fear. And whatever Ravenna Blackwood felt when she looked downrange, it wasn't fear. It was something that looked a lot like sorrow. Week 3. The morning was cool, unusual for June in North Carolina. A storm front had moved through overnight, leaving the air clean and sharp, perfect visibility. Physical training. 5-mile run through the pine forest, full gear, weapons and all. 18 recruits, now 17, One had quit after failing 3 straight range sessions, pounded through the red dirt trails. Ravenna ran in the middle of the pack. Not first, not last. Steady, controlled. Her breathing was even, her stride efficient. The rifle across her back didn't seem to slow her down at all. Hawthorne was up front with Morrison, setting the pace, but he kept glancing back, watching her. Something was bothering him. It had been bothering him for days. The way she moved, the way she carried herself, the absolute stillness in her eyes. He'd seen that look before, in the eyes of men who'd been downrange, men who'd pulled triggers and lived with what came after. But Ravenna Blackwood had never been in combat. Her record was clean. 3 years in military intelligence, Afghanistan, but purely analytical work. No combat deployments, no action. So why did she look like someone who'd seen war? They finished the run. 17 men bent over, hands on knees, sucking air. Morrison checked his watch, nodded approval. Ravenna stood straight, breathing steady, waiting. "Good run," Morrison said. "Hydrate. Be at the range in 30 minutes." The group dispersed. Hawthorne lingered, watched Ravenna walk toward the barracks, then made a decision. He found her at the equipment shed, cleaning rifles that didn't need cleaning. Again. "Blackwood." She looked up. "Corporal, can I ask you something?" "Yes." "Why'd you enlist?" She set down the rifle she was cleaning, looked at him directly. "To honor a promise." "What promise?" "A promise I made to 11 men I never met." Hawthorne frowned. "What?" "My father's team. Black Viper. Desert Storm, 1991. 11 operators went into Iraq. 1 came back." She picked up a cleaning rod, threaded a patch through it. "I was born 3 months later. First time my father held me, he whispered their names. Marcus Flint, Wyatt Cross, Dalton Reed." She paused. "All 11 of them." "That's," Hawthorne struggled for words, "that's heavy." "It is. So you enlisted to, what, honor their memory?" "I enlisted," Ravenna said, running the patch down the barrel with gentle pressure, "to make sure their deaths weren't meaningless, to make sure someone remembered what they sacrificed, to carry forward what they represented." "Which was?" She pulled the patch out, examined it, threaded through a new one. "Excellence, discipline, selflessness." Another pass down the barrel. "The understanding that being a soldier isn't about glory, it's about responsibility." Hawthorne leaned against the doorframe. "And that's why you won't shoot." She didn't answer immediately, just kept cleaning, methodical, precise. "I'll shoot when I'm ready," she said finally. "When I'm certain." "Certain of what?" "That I understand the weight of what I'm doing." Hawthorne wanted to laugh, wanted to tell her that was the most pretentious, self-important garbage he'd ever heard. That shooting was about muscle and nerve and repetition, not philosophy. But he didn't. Because the way she said it, the absolute conviction in her voice, made him believe she meant every word. "You know they're going to wash you out," he said instead. "You can't graduate sniper school without actually sniping." "I know. And you're okay with that?" Ravenna looked up at him, and for the first time since arriving at Fort Bragg, she smiled. It was small, sad, but real. "I'm not here to graduate, Corporal. I'm here to learn whether I'm worthy of this." She gestured to the rifles around them. "Whether I can carry this responsibility the way they did." "Who?" "The 11 men who died so that others could live." She went back to cleaning. Hawthorne stood there for a long moment, then turned and walked away. Behind him, Ravenna whispered something too quiet for him to hear. 11 names, one after another, like a prayer. End of week 3, Friday evening. The recruits had liberty until Sunday night. Most headed into Fayetteville, looking for bars, women, anything to take the edge off 3 weeks of relentless training. Hawthorne stayed behind. He found Morrison in the operations office, reviewing performance evaluations. "Sergeant, got a minute?" Morrison didn't look up from his paperwork, Make it quick. It's about Blackwood. What about her? She's got the highest scores in classroom work, perfect marks on equipment maintenance, top third in physical training. But she hasn't fired a single round in 3 weeks. I'm aware. So why is she still here? Now Morrison looked up. That's a good question, Corporal. You have a theory? Hawthorne hesitated. I think there's something we're missing about her, about why she's really here. She's here because she qualified for the program. No, Hawthorne shook his head. That's not it. I've seen her handle a rifle, Sergeant, the way she moves, the way she checks every component. That's not someone who learned from books. That's someone who's put in serious hours. Her father trained her. Yeah, but Hawthorne struggled to articulate what his gut was telling him. It's more than that. It's like she's already done this. Like she knows exactly what we're teaching, she just won't demonstrate it. Morrison leaned back in his chair, studied Hawthorne with new interest. You're more observant than I gave you credit for, Corporal. So you see it too. I see a lot of things. Morrison closed the folder. Colonel Blackwood called me before his daughter arrived. What'd he say? He said, and I quote, Sergeant Morrison, my daughter is going to show up at your course. She's going to refuse to shoot, and you're going to wonder why the hell I let her waste everyone's time. Morrison rubbed his eyes. He asked me to let her stay, said she needed to learn something that he couldn't teach her. What? He didn't say. So we're just supposed to babysit her? Morrison's eyes hardened. We're supposed to do our jobs, and part of that job is recognizing when someone needs time to work through something. He stood. You ever hear of Black Viper, Corporal? Just what everyone knows. Special Ops Unit. Desert Storm. Got wiped out on some classified mission. 11 men, 1 survivor. Colonel Thaddeus Blackwood. Morrison walked to the window, looked out at the range. You know what happens to the survivor of something like that? Hawthorne didn't answer. You spend the rest of your life wondering why you lived when everyone else died. You carry their names, their faces, their families. You carry the weight of missions that never should have happened and outcomes you couldn't control. Morrison turned back. And then, 33 years later, your daughter shows up saying she wants to honor their memory by becoming a sniper. What do? I'd tell her no, Hawthorne said immediately. I'd tell her to find something else, anything else. He did, for years. She enlisted anyway, went to West Point anyway, requested sniper school anyway. Morrison's expression was grim. Some legacies you can't escape, Corporal. You can only learn to carry them. So that's what she's doing here? Learning to carry her father's ghosts? That's one way of looking at it. What's the other way? Morrison didn't answer for a long time. When he did, his voice was quiet. Maybe she's learning whether she's strong enough to pull the trigger, or whether she's wise enough not to. Week 4, Tuesday, 0600. The recruits assembled on the parade ground for morning formation. Morrison stood at the front, as always, but today, someone stood beside him. Colonel Thaddeus Blackwood, 68 years old, 6'2", shoulders still broad despite the years, hair gone mostly white, cut military short, eyes the same green as his daughter's, but harder, colder, carrying the kind of weight that never went away. He wore his Class A uniform, chest full of ribbons, silver eagles on his shoulders, and on his left breast, above all the other decorations, a small black patch, a snake coiled around a bullet. Black Viper. The men snapped to attention. No one had expected the colonel. His presence transformed the morning from routine to momentous. Morrison called the formation to order, then stepped aside. Colonel Blackwood walked forward. His boots crunched on gravel, each step measured, deliberate. He stopped at the center of the formation, looked at each man in turn. His eyes found Ravenna last. She stood at attention. Perfect posture, face impassive. But Hawthorne, standing 3 places down, saw her hands. They were clenched so tight the knuckles had gone white. At ease, the colonel said. 17 men relaxed. Ravenna didn't move. The colonel's eyes lingered on her for a moment. Something passed between them. Something private, painful. Then he addressed the formation. I served in the United States Army for 35 years. I've trained snipers, led special operations teams, conducted missions in 12 countries across 4 continents. And in all that time, I learned one fundamental truth. He paused. The hardest shot is always the first one. The words hung in the air. Not because of distance, not because of conditions, but because of what it represents. The moment you pull that trigger, you cross a line. You become something different, and you never cross back. His voice was steady, matter of fact, the voice of someone who'd lived this truth. Some of you will pull that trigger without hesitation. You'll be good soldiers, effective, efficient. You'll complete your missions and sleep soundly. He began to pace, slowly, like a predator circling prey. Others will hesitate. You'll think too much, feel too much, question too much, and that hesitation might get you killed, or worse, get someone else killed. His eyes found Ravenna again. And then there's a third type, rare, very rare. These are the soldiers who understand, truly understand, the weight of what they're about to do, who feel the full gravity of taking a life before they ever pull the trigger, who carry that weight forward, not backward. He stopped directly in front of his daughter. These soldiers make the best snipers because they never forget that the target downrange is a human being, a person with a family, with dreams, with a life that ends the moment they squeeze the trigger. The parade ground was silent except for the wind in the pines. But these soldiers also suffer the most because that understanding, that empathy never goes away. Every shot stays with them, every face, every moment. His voice dropped. Some of them never fire at all because the weight becomes too much. He took a breath. 33 years ago, I was part of a 12-man unit called Black Viper. We went into Iraq on a mission that should have been routine. Extract intelligence, eliminate 3 targets, get out. The men were transfixed. The intelligence was wrong. What should have been 30 enemy combatants was closer to 200. What should have been a 2-hour operation became a last stand. His jaw tightened. 11 men died in that building. Good men. The best men I ever served with. And I survived because I was 800 meters away, providing overwatch. Someone in the formation made a small sound, quickly suppressed. For 33 years, I've asked myself the same question every single night. Why them? Why not me? What made my life worth more than theirs? He looked at Ravenna, and I've never found an answer. His daughter's eyes were wet, but she didn't blink, didn't let the tears fall. I tell you this because some of you are wondering why Private Blackwood hasn't fired a weapon in 4 weeks. You think she's afraid, or incapable, or doesn't belong here. He turned to address the whole formation. You're wrong. My daughter has been trained since she was 6 years old. She can field strip a rifle in under 30 seconds. Calculate windage and elevation adjustments faster than your rangefinders. She knows more about ballistics than most of your instructors. Morrison's eyebrows went up slightly, but he said nothing. She won't shoot because she understands something most of you don't. Something it took me 11 dead friends to learn. The colonel's voice hardened. That every shot you take changes you. That every life you take becomes part of you. That the weight never, ever gets lighter. He walked back to the center. So yes, she's learning, but not what you think. She's not learning how to shoot. She's learning whether she can live with what comes after. Silence. Then Corporal Hawthorne, against every military instinct he had, spoke up. Sir, permission to speak. The colonel's eyes found him. Granted. With respect, sir, Black Viper was 33 years ago. Private Blackwood wasn't even born yet. How can she carry the weight of something she didn't experience? It was the question everyone was thinking. The colonel almost smiled. Almost. Because I taught her to, he said simply. Because the first time I held her, 3 months after that mission, I whispered 11 names into her ear. And I've told her their stories every year since. Marcus Flint, who wanted to be a teacher. Wyatt Cross, who built houses for homeless veterans. Dalton Reed, who was 19 years old and wrote poetry. His voice cracked slightly. She knows them as well as I do, maybe better. Because to her, they're not ghosts. They're heroes worth honoring. He turned back to Ravenna. So when you mock my daughter for not shooting, understand what you're actually mocking. You're mocking someone who takes this responsibility so seriously that she won't pull a trigger until she's absolutely certain she can bear the weight. You're mocking someone who honors the dead by refusing to add to their number carelessly. He took a step closer to her. And you're mocking the bravest person I've ever known. A single tear tracked down Ravenna's face. The colonel raised his hand, saluted, sharp, perfect. His daughter returned the salute. Then he turned and walked away. The formation stood frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. Morrison finally broke the silence. Dismissed. The men scattered, all except Hawthorne, who stood rooted to the spot, watching Ravenna. She hadn't moved. Still at attention, face wet now with tears she wasn't bothering to hide. Morrison approached her, spoke quietly. "You okay, Private?" She nodded, once. "You knew he was coming." Another nod. "Did you ask him to?" "No, Sergeant." Her voice was barely a whisper. "But I'm glad he did." Morrison studied her for a long moment. "Report to the range at 1400. Her eyes snapped to his. "Sergeant?" "You heard me. 1400. Full gear. Be ready to fire." "I don't know if I didn't ask if you were ready, Private. I gave you an order. 1400. That's 3 hours from now. I suggest you use them wisely." He walked away. Ravenna stood alone on the parade ground, Fort Bragg sprawling around her in the June heat. And for the first time since arriving, she allowed herself to break. She sank to her knees, covered her face with her hands, and wept for 11 men she'd never met, but carried with her every single day. Above her, the flag snapped in the wind. The sun climbed higher, and the moment that would define everything was 3 hours away. 1400 hours came like judgment. The range was empty except for 2 people. Sergeant Morrison stood at the firing line, arms crossed, eyes hidden behind sunglasses that reflected nothing but sky. And Ravenna Blackwood, standing 10 feet away, M24 rifle slung across her back, looking at the targets downrange like they were headstones. The air shimmered with heat, 103 degrees, no clouds, wind from the southwest at 8 miles per hour, steady, perfect conditions for shooting, terrible conditions for thinking. "You've got your gear," Morrison said. "You've got 5 rounds, 300 meters, prone position. Put at least 3 of 5 on paper and we'll call it progress." Ravenna didn't move. "That's an order, Private." She unslung the rifle. The weight of it in her hands felt wrong, too light, like it was made of something insubstantial, like it might disappear if she squeezed too hard. Morrison waited. He was good at waiting. 20 years in the Army had taught him patience, the way water teaches stone. Ravenna dropped to one knee, then prone. The red clay was hot enough to cook eggs. She barely noticed. Her world had contracted to the rifle in her hands and the paper target 3 football fields away. She pressed her cheek to the stock, found the scope. The target swam into focus. Black circles on white paper. Center mass marked with an X. Her breathing was wrong, too fast, too shallow. She closed her eyes, forced herself to slow down. 4 counts in, hold, 4 counts out. The rhythm of meditation. The rhythm her father had taught her before she could tie her own shoes. Behind her, Morrison checked his watch. "You've got all day, Private, but the sun doesn't." Ravenna opened her eyes, finger on the trigger now. 2 pounds of pressure, that's all it would take. 2 pounds and a choice that couldn't be unmade. She thought about Marcus Flint, 32 years old, wanted to be a high school history teacher, had already been accepted to graduate school before the Army called, died in a building in Iraq with a bullet through his chest, bleeding out on cold concrete while her father watched from 800 meters away. She thought about Wyatt Cross, built houses for homeless veterans in his spare time, had calloused hands and a laugh that could fill a room, died trying to hold a door closed while his teammates escaped through a window. The door didn't hold. She thought about Dalton Reed, 19 years old, wrote poetry in a notebook he carried everywhere. His last words, according to the after-action report her father never knew she'd read, were asking someone to tell his mother he loved her. No one ever got the chance. His body was recovered 3 days later. The trigger pressed back against her finger. She couldn't pull it. Morrison's shadow fell across her. "What's the problem?" "I can't, Sergeant." "Can't or won't?" "Both." He crouched beside her. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, almost gentle. "Your father told me something when you first got here. Want to know what it was?" Ravenna didn't answer. "He said you've been shooting since you were 6. Said you could hit a moving target at 600 meters by the time you were 14. Said you're the best natural marksman he's ever seen, including himself." Morrison pulled off his sunglasses. His eyes were gray, kind, tired. "So why can't you pull that trigger?" "Because I've never had to." "Had to what?" "Had to live with what comes after." She turned her head, looked at him. "Every time my father shoots, he carries it. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees faces. 11 of them, plus whoever he killed to try to save them. That's what being a sniper means. That's the price. And you don't want to pay it?" "I don't know if I can." Morrison nodded slowly. "Then you're in the wrong line of work, Private." "I know. And you should probably quit." "I know that too. But you won't." "No, Sergeant." "Why not?" Ravenna looked back through the scope. The target waited, patient, eternal. "Because 11 men died believing their sacrifice meant something. And if I quit, if I walk away because it's too hard, then I'm saying their deaths don't matter. That legacy doesn't matter. That the weight isn't worth carrying." She took a breath. "And I can't do that." Morrison stood, brushed clay dust off his knees. "Then stop thinking about it and shoot." He walked away, back to the observation point, left her alone with her rifle and her ghosts. Ravenna closed her eyes again, reached for that place of stillness her father had shown her, the place where doubt couldn't follow, where the only things that existed were breath and heartbeat and the space between seconds. She found it, opened her eyes, acquired the target, and squeezed. The rifle cracked, sharp, final. The sound echoed off the tree line and died in the heat. Downrange, the paper target didn't move. Complete miss. Morrison's voice carried from behind her. "Again!" She worked the bolt. Brass ejected, spinning gold in the sunlight. Chambered a new round. Found the target. This time she didn't think, just breathed, just squeezed. Another crack. Another miss. "Again!" Third round. Her hands were shaking now. Sweat ran down her face, stinging her eyes. The scope swam. Miss. Again. Fourth round. This time she hit paper. Low and left. Nowhere near center mass, but on the target. Morrison said nothing. Fifth round. Last one. Make it count. Ravenna settled. Let everything go. The heat, the pressure, the 11 names that whispered in her head like prayers. She found that still place again. The place where shooting wasn't about killing. It was about precision, about discipline, about making the bullet go exactly where she intended and nowhere else. She squeezed. The rifle spoke. And downrange, the target rocked back on its frame. Center mass, dead center, the X marked perfectly. Morrison walked down to the firing line, looked through the spotting scope, looked at Ravenna. 1 out of 5, that's failing. "Yes, Sergeant." "You know what happens to failures in this course?" They get recycled or dropped. That's right. He lowered the scope. Report back here tomorrow, 0600. We're going to do this again, and we'll keep doing it until you can put 5 out of 5 on target, or until I kick you out, whichever comes first. Yes, Sergeant. Dismissed. Ravenna stood, safed her rifle, started walking back to the barracks. Morrison called after her. Private! She stopped, turned. That last shot, he said, that was good shooting, real good. You know why? No, Sergeant, because you stopped thinking and started doing. Remember that. She nodded, walked away. Morrison watched her go, then pulled out his phone, dialed a number he knew by heart. 3 rings. Blackwood. Colonel, it's Morrison. How is she? She fired today, 5 rounds, hit paper once, center mass. Silence on the other end. Then, only once? Only once, but that one shot. Morrison paused. Sir, I've been training snipers for 15 years. I know the difference between luck and skill. That wasn't luck. No, it never is with her. Colonel, why didn't you tell me she could shoot like that? Another pause, longer this time. Because knowing how to shoot and being able to shoot are 2 different things, Sergeant. She knows how. She's always known how. But until today, she'd never been able to pull the trigger. That weight we talked about, she feels it before the shot, not after. Most people don't understand what they've done until it's over. Raven understands before she even puts her finger on the trigger. Morrison looked downrange at the targets, at the one with the perfect center mass hit. That's going to destroy her, he said quietly. I know, the colonel replied, but it's also going to make her the best sniper you've ever trained, if she survives it. The line went dead. Morrison stood alone on the range as the sun began its slow descent toward the tree line, and wondered what kind of father deliberately put his daughter through something like this. Then he remembered Black Viper and understood. Some legacies demanded everything. The next morning, Ravenna fired 10 rounds, hit paper 7 times, center mass 3 times. The morning after that, 15 rounds, 12 on paper, 8 center mass. By the end of week 5, she was hitting center mass 9 times out of 10 at 300 meters. By week 6, she'd moved to 500 meters and was still hitting 8 out of 10. The other recruits watched, stopped laughing, started paying attention. Corporal Hawthorne watched most of all. He thought he understood what was happening, thought Ravenna was just another rich kid coasting on daddy's name until reality smacked her down. But what he was watching now wasn't coasting. It was something else entirely. It was mastery emerging from hiding. Week 7, Tuesday. The recruits were running exercises in pairs, shooter and spotter. Hawthorne had drawn Ravenna as his spotter. They lay in the dirt 600 meters from a series of steel targets painted to look like enemy combatants. Hawthorne's job was to hit 5 targets in 90 seconds. Ravenna's job was to feed him corrections. The whistle blew. Hawthorne fired. The round snapped downrange, hit low and right. 2 minutes of angle right, 1 minute high, Ravenna said, voice calm, eyes never leaving the scope. Hawthorne adjusted, fired, hit. Target 1 down, shift left, target 2, no wind correction, fire when ready. He fired, hit. Target 2 down, target 3, same elevation, add 1 minute right for wind. Hawthorne made the adjustment, but before he could fire, a gust kicked up. The trees around them bent. The mirage downrange danced. Hold, Ravenna said sharply. I've got the shot. Hold. The wind steadied. 3 seconds. 4. Send it. Hawthorne fired. Perfect hit. They cleared all 5 targets in 73 seconds. Best time of the day. Morrison called them back. Good shooting, Corporal. Blackwood, solid spotting. Take 5. As they walked back to the rest area, Hawthorne finally asked the question that had been eating at him for weeks. How do you do that? Do what? Know exactly when to shoot. That wind call. I couldn't even feel the shift. But you called it before it happened. Ravenna unloaded her rifle, started cleaning it automatically. I didn't call it before it happened. I felt the pressure change. Air feels different when wind's about to shift. Temperature drops slightly. You can feel it on your skin if you're paying attention. Nobody can feel that. She looked at him. You can. You just don't know you can. Most people think shooting is about eyes and hands. It's not. It's about everything. Your whole body is a sensor array. Wind on your face, heat on your neck, the way grass moves, the way birds fly. Everything tells you something if you're listening. Hawthorne sat down hard on a bench. Jesus, you sound like a monk. My father taught me that patience and observation matter more than speed and strength. That the sniper who takes one perfect shot beats the sniper who takes 10 good shots every single time. How long did it take you to learn that? 22 years, Ravenna said simply, and I'm still learning. She finished cleaning her rifle, stood. Corporal, can I ask you something? Sure. Why did you hate me when I first got here? Hawthorne opened his mouth, closed it, looked away. I didn't hate you. You mocked me, called me names, bet money I'd quit. That's not hate, that's soldier shit. We give each other grief. No. Ravenna's voice was firm. You singled me out. You wanted me to fail. Why? He didn't answer for a long time. When he did, his voice was quiet. My sister tried to join the army 3 years ago. Combat engineer, made it through basic, made it through AIT, got to her first duty station and he stopped. The guys in her unit made her life hell. Sexual harassment, constant hazing, told her she didn't belong, that women weren't strong enough, weren't tough enough. She lasted 6 months. Then she quit. I'm sorry. Don't be. She's doing great now. Got a job with a construction company. Makes good money. She's happy. He looked at Ravenna. But I think about what they did to her. How they drove out someone who could have been great. And when you showed up, all I could think was, here we go again. Another woman trying to prove something in a world that doesn't want her. Better to drive her out now than watch her suffer for months. That's a coward's logic. Yeah, he laughed bitterly. Yeah, it is, but you changed your mind. Had to. After watching you spot for me today, after seeing how you handle a rifle, after listening to your father talk about you. He shook his head. You're not here to prove something. You're not here because you want to be special. You're here because you actually understand what this job means. And that's rare. Male or female, that's rare as hell. Ravenna didn't respond immediately, just looked at him with those old eyes. Thank you, Corporal. For what? For being honest. She walked away. Hawthorne sat alone on the bench, feeling like he'd just been given something valuable and wasn't quite sure what to do with it. Captain Garrison Steele walked up, 45 years old, weathered face, eyes that had seen 3 combat deployments and didn't flinch anymore. Corporal, you and Blackwood look good out there. Thank you, sir. She's improving fast. Yes, sir. Steele sat down. You know what the final test is, right? The impossible shot, sir. Every sniper course ended with the same test. 1 shot, 1 chance. Distance and conditions calibrated to push even experienced marksmen to their absolute limits. Most recruits took 3 or 4 attempts to pass. Some never did. You know what Blackwood's test is going to be? Hawthorne frowned. Sir? Her father's shot, February 1991, Iraq. 1,247 yards. Moving target, desert conditions. We've been replicating the scenario for the past month. Heat lamps to create mirage. Wind machines for atmospheric disturbance. Moving target platform running at exactly 3 miles per hour. Steele's expression was unreadable. We're calling it the Black Viper Challenge. That's, Hawthorne struggled for words. Sir, that's not fair. That shot was legendary because it was almost impossible. Even Colonel Blackwood said it was half luck. I'm aware. So why make her replicate it? Because she asked to. Hawthorne stared. What? Last week, she came to my office, said if she was going to graduate, she wanted her final test to be her father's shot, said anything less would be dishonoring his legacy. Steele stood. I tried to talk her out of it, told her she could just pass the standard test, but she insisted. When? Friday, 1400, full base observation. Everyone's invited. Steele started walking away, then stopped. Turned back. Corporal, you're one of the best shooters in this class. If I asked you to take that shot, could you make it? Hawthorne thought about it, really thought. 1,247 yards, almost 3/4 of a mile, with heat mirage and wind and a moving target. No, sir, I don't think so. Neither do I. Steele looked toward the barracks where Ravenna had disappeared. But something tells me she can. And if she does, she won't just be graduating this course. She'll be making history. He left. Hawthorne sat alone with his thoughts until the sun started setting and the range fell into shadow. Friday morning came with storm clouds. The forecast called for rain by evening. Thunder rumbled in the distance. The air felt heavy, electric, pregnant with tension. Ravenna woke at 0400. Couldn't sleep. Hadn't really slept all week. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the target, saw the distance, saw the impossible gap between where she was and where the bullet needed to go. 1,247 yards. One shot, one chance. She dressed in the dark, walked to the range while the rest of the base slept, found the firing position that had been prepared, a small rise overlooking the longest stretch of cleared ground Fort Bragg possessed. The target was barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness, just a shape, a suggestion. By 1400, it would be shimmering in heat and distance. She lay down in the prone position, looked through the scope she'd be using, a Schmidt in Bender 5 to 25 power, the best glass the Army had. It made the target look closer, but not close enough. Behind her, gravel crunched. She didn't turn around, knew the footsteps. Couldn't sleep either? Her father's voice. No, she said quietly. Colonel Blackwood lowered himself to the ground beside her with a grunt. 68-year-old knees didn't bend the way they used to. You don't have to do this, he said. Yes, I do. Why? To prove something to them? To me? To myself. She rolled onto her side, looked at him. In the gray light, his face was all angles and shadows. The face of a man who'd seen things he wished he could forget and knew he never would. Dad, how did you live with it? With what? The weight, 11 men, 33 years. How do you wake up every morning and not drown? He didn't answer right away, just looked out at the range, at the target waiting in the distance. You want the truth? Always. Some mornings I do drown. I wake up and I can't breathe. I see their faces, hear their voices, and I think, why them? Why not me? What made my life worth 11 of theirs? He picked up a small rock, turned it over in his fingers. But then I get up, I get dressed, I do my job, because that's what they would have wanted. Not for me to suffer, not for me to quit, but to keep going, to make their sacrifice mean something. How do you make it mean something? By being better today than I was yesterday, by teaching what I've learned, by making sure the next generation of soldiers doesn't make the same mistakes we did. He dropped the rock. And by raising a daughter who understands that legacy isn't about repeating the past, it's about honoring it while building something new. Ravenna felt tears coming, forced them back. What if I miss? Then you miss, and you learn from it, and you try again. What if I can't do it? What if I'm not strong enough? Now her father looked at her, really looked, and in his eyes was something she'd never seen before. Pride. Raven, you've been strong enough since the day you were born. The question was never about strength. It was about whether you could accept who you are, what you're capable of, the legacy you carry. And what am I? You're my daughter. You're a soldier. You're the sum total of 11 men who died too young and one man who lived too long. Your hope and grief and determination wrapped in skin and bone. He reached out, touched her cheek. And you're the best shot I've ever seen. Better than you? Way better than me. I just got lucky in Iraq. But you don't need luck. You've got something I never had. What? You've got their blessing. All 11 of them. They're watching, and they're proud. The sun broke over the horizon. Golden light spilled across the range. Colonel Blackwood stood, helped his daughter to her feet. Get some breakfast. Rest. Be ready at 1400. Dad. Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For training me. For believing in me. For carrying them so I didn't have to. You carried them anyway. I know, but at least I didn't carry them alone. He pulled her into a hug, held her tight. When he spoke, his voice was thick. Whatever happens today, I'm proud of you. Win or lose. Hit or miss, I'm proud. They stood there for a long moment, father and daughter. Two people carrying the same ghosts, the same names, the same impossible weight. Then the moment ended. Colonel Blackwood walked away. Ravenna watched him go, then turned back to face the range. 1,247 yards. 12 hours to go. The morning passed in a blur. Breakfast she couldn't taste. Equipment checks she barely registered. Other recruits trying to wish her luck and her nodding mechanically, not really hearing them. By 13:30, the entire base knew. By 13:45, over 200 people had gathered at the observation point. 1,400 came like an execution. The sky had clouded over. The temperature had climbed to 97 degrees. Humidity made the air feel like soup. Wind from the southwest at 18 miles per hour, gusting to 22. Miserable conditions. Perfect replication of Iraq, February 1991. Ravenna walked to the firing position. She carried a Macmillan TAC 50 caliber, the same model her father had used 33 years ago. The rifle was heavy, nearly 30 pounds fully loaded, but in her hands it felt weightless. Captain Steele stood waiting. He held a single round, 50 BMG, 750 grains of copper-jacketed lead, enough stopping power to punch through an engine block. Private Blackwood, this is your final test. One shot, 1,247 yards. Target is a 12-inch steel plate on a moving rail, simulating vehicle speed of 3 miles per hour. Wind and heat conditions are calibrated to match historical data from February 25, 1991. You have 60 seconds from the moment you chamber the round to take your shot. Pass or fail. No retries. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Do you wish to proceed? Ravenna looked at the crowd, at Morrison, at Hawthorne, at the 17 other recruits who'd started this course with her, at her father, standing in the back, face unreadable. Yes, sir. Then take your position. She dropped prone. The earth was hard beneath her, hot, uncomfortable. She barely noticed. Steele handed her the round. Chamber when ready. Ravenna took the massive cartridge, held it up to the light. It gleamed. Beautiful. Terrible. She thought about Dalton Reed, 19 years old, wrote poetry, died asking someone to tell his mother he loved her. She thought about Wyatt Cross, built houses for veterans, died holding a door. She thought about Marcus Flint, wanted to be a teacher, died bleeding on cold concrete. She thought about all 11 of them, every name, every face, every story her father had told her over 28 years. And she chambered the round. The bolt slid home with a sound like finality. Time starts now, Steele announced. 60 seconds. Ravenna settled into the rifle, pressed her cheek to the stock, found the scope. The target appeared. Small, impossibly small, moving from left to right at a crawl. 12 inches of steel 3/4 of a mile away through heat and wind and humidity that made the air dance. Her heartbeat slowed. 4 beats per minute, impossibly slow. The rhythm of meditation, the rhythm of perfect stillness. She watched the wind, not with instruments, with her skin, with the way grass bent, with the way heat rippled. 18 miles per hour, southwest. That meant 6.4 minutes of angle drift, but the gusts meant she needed to account for variation. Call it 7 minutes, maybe 7.2. Elevation. 1,247 yards meant 12.3 minutes up, but the heat meant air density was low. Rounds flew flatter in thin air. Call it 11.8. Target speed, 3 miles per hour left to right. That meant zero point 0.3 seconds of lead time. At this distance, 0.3 seconds was 14 inches of travel. The target was only 12 inches wide. She had to hit a moving 12-inch target from 3/4 of a mile away with a 2-inch margin of error. The math was impossible. The shot was impossible. But math didn't account for 22 years of training, didn't account for 10,000 practice shots, didn't account for genetic memory passed from father to daughter like heirloom silver. And it didn't account for 11 men who believed in her. She made the adjustments. 7.2 right, 11.8 up. Lead the target by 14 inches. 40 seconds gone. The wind gusted. She waited. 30 seconds. Wind steadied. 20 seconds. She found that still place. The place where doubt died, where only precision lived. 10 seconds. Breath in. 4 counts. Hold. Breath out. 4 counts. 5 seconds. The target moved into her crosshairs. 3 seconds. She saw them. All 11. Standing behind the target, watching, waiting. Marcus Flint smiled. Wyatt Cross nodded. Dalton Reed, 19 forever, whispered, "Make it count." 1 second. Ravenna squeezed the trigger. The TAC-50 roared. 50 caliber sounded like God clearing his throat. The recoil drove back into her shoulder with enough force to bruise. The muzzle blast kicked up a cloud of red dust that obscured everything. She didn't need to see. She knew. 2.8 seconds of flight time. The bullet traveled at 2,800 feet per second, dropped 47 inches over the distance, drifted 21 inches right, led the target by exactly 14 inches, and hit. The sound reached them 3 seconds after the shot, a sharp clang that rang across the range like a church bell. The steel target rocked back on its frame, stopped, fell, dead center, perfect hit. The crowd erupted, 200 people screaming, cheering, losing their minds. Recruits hugging each other, instructors shaking their heads in disbelief, Morrison pumping his fist like he just won the Super Bowl. Captain Steele walked down to the firing line, looked through the spotting scope, looked at Ravenna. "Center mass, perfect shot," he extended his hand. "Congratulations, Private, you just made history." Ravenna didn't take his hand. She was crying, not tears of joy, tears of release. 28 years of carrying ghosts. 28 years of wondering if she was worthy. 28 years of trying to honor men she'd never met. And in one shot, one perfect, impossible shot, she'd done it. She'd made their sacrifice mean something. Colonel Blackwood pushed through the crowd, dropped to his knees beside his daughter, pulled her into his arms while she sobbed into his shoulder. "You did it," he whispered. "They saw you. They know. You honored them." "I felt them," she gasped between sobs. "Dad, I felt them behind the target. They were there." "I know. I saw them too." They held each other while the crowd celebrated around them, while history was being made, while a legacy 33 years old finally found its redemption. Corporal Hawthorne stood watching, tears running down his face. He'd never seen anything like it, never imagined anything like it was possible. Garrett Pierce put a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" "Yeah," Hawthorne wiped his eyes. "Yeah, I need to call my sister. Tell her I was wrong. Tell her she should have stayed. Tell her there's still hope. For what? For all of us. As the sun broke through the clouds, as the storm that had threatened all day dissipated into nothing, Ravenna Blackwood stood. Captain Steele cleared his throat. The crowd quieted. Private Blackwood, do you have anything you'd like to say? She looked at the 200 faces watching her, waiting, expecting some profound statement about achievement or capability or breaking barriers. Instead, she said, "This shot wasn't mine. It belonged to 11 men who died in Iraq, to Marcus Flint and Wyatt Cross and Dalton Reed and 8 others whose names deserve to be remembered. They taught me, through my father, that legacy isn't about being the best. It's about honoring those who came before, about making their sacrifice meaningful, about carrying their memory forward with precision and respect." She took a breath. "I'm not the best shot here because I'm talented. I'm the best shot here because I had 11 teachers who died before I was born. And if I can honor their memory by being worthy of this legacy, then maybe their deaths weren't meaningless. Maybe their sacrifice planted seeds that took 33 years to bloom. Maybe that's what legacy really is. Not monuments or medals, but making sure the next generation is better than the last." Silence. Then Morrison started clapping. Then Hawthorne. Then everyone. The applause rolled across Fort Bragg like thunder, like absolution, like 11 ghosts finally able to rest. Ravenna closed her eyes and whispered 11 names one more time, not as prayer, as promise. Mission complete. 3 months later, the leaves had started turning. Fort Bragg in September was different than Fort Bragg in June. Cooler, quieter. The summer heat had broken, replaced by mornings that required jackets and evenings that smelled like wood smoke and possibility. Ravenna Blackwood stood in front of a classroom of 22 new recruits, wearing the instructor's tab she'd earned with blood and tears and one impossible shot. 28 years old, the youngest chief sniper instructor in Fort Bragg history. And judging by the looks on the faces staring back at her, the least expected. 22 recruits, 19 men, 3 women. The men looked skeptical. The women looked terrified. "My name is Instructor Blackwood," Ravenna said. Her voice was calm, even, the voice of someone who'd learned to speak through doubt. "For the next 8 weeks, I will teach you how to shoot, how to think, and if you're very lucky, how to survive what comes after." One hand went up. A thick-necked corporal with a Georgia accent and shoulders that suggested he'd grown up throwing hay bales. His name tape read, "Granger." "Ma'am, no disrespect, but you look about 12 years old. What makes you qualified to teach us anything?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Ravenna didn't react, just walked to the whiteboard behind her and wrote a number. 1,247. Anyone know what that number means? Silence. That's the distance in yards of the longest confirmed training shot in Fort Bragg history. Made 3 months ago during final qualification. One shot, moving target, desert conditions, perfect center mass. She turned to face them. "I made that shot. And before you ask, yes, it's been verified. Yes, it's on record. And yes, that makes me qualified." Granger's smirk faded. "Now, before we talk about shooting, we're going to talk about responsibility. Because shooting is the easy part. Living with it is what separates snipers from everyone else." She picked up a piece of chalk, wrote on the board, "The best sniper isn't the one with the most kills. It's the one who brings everyone home." That's a quote from my father, Captain Thaddeus Blackwood, Black Viper Unit, Desert Storm. He learned it by watching 11 men die while he was too far away to help them. I learned it by carrying their names for 28 years. You're going to learn it the easy way, by listening. One of the women raised her hand, young, maybe 22. Name tape read, Thornton. Her hands shook slightly. "Ma'am, I have a question." "Go ahead, Private." "They told us you didn't fire a shot for the first month of your training. that you just observed. Why? Ravenna set down the chalk. The question hung in the air like smoke. Because I was afraid, she said simply. The room shifted. That wasn't the answer they expected. Instructors didn't admit fear. Fear was weakness. Fear got you killed. I was afraid that pulling the trigger would change me, make me someone I didn't want to be. I'd spent my entire life learning how to shoot, but I'd never really thought about what it meant. What weight I'd be carrying. What faces I'd see when I closed my eyes. She walked between the desks. So I waited. I observed. I thought. And when I finally fired, I understood something that took my father 11 deaths to learn. What's that, ma'am? Thornton asked. That every shot carries a legacy. Every bullet that leaves your rifle becomes part of who you are. You can't take it back. Can't undo it. Can't pretend it didn't happen. So before you pull that trigger, you better be damn sure you can live with what comes next. Granger raised his hand again. Ma'am, with respect, we're here to learn how to eliminate targets, not philosophize about feelings. Ravenna stopped in front of his desk, looked down at him. You're right, Corporal. Let me show you elimination. She walked to the corner of the classroom, picked up a rifle case, set it on her desk and opened it. Inside was a Barrett M82, 50 caliber, semi-automatic, the kind of weapon that could punch through armor plating from a mile away. This is my personal rifle. Anyone here familiar with the Barrett? A few hands went up. Good. Then you know it kicks like an angry mule and sounds like the world ending. She loaded a magazine, 10 rounds. Outside on the demonstration range, I've set up 6 steel targets at various distances, 400 to 900 yards. You're going to watch me engage all 6. Then you're going to tell me which one was the most important. She walked out. The recruits followed. The morning was crisp. Dew still clung to the grass. 6 steel silhouettes stood at different ranges, each painted to resemble a human figure. Some close, some far, some partially obscured by terrain. Ravenna dropped prone, settled the Barrett. The rifle was massive, nearly 4 feet long, weighed 30 pounds loaded. In her small frame, it looked absurd. Time starts now, she announced. She fired. The Barrett roared. The first target, closest at 400 yards, rang like a gong and fell. She worked the bolt, acquired the second target, 500 yards, fired, hit. Third target, 600 yards. Behind a berm, only the head visible. Fired. The steel head disappeared. Fourth target, 700 yards. Fired. Hit. Fifth target, 800 yards. Partially obscured by a tree. She adjusted. Fired. The visible portion exploded. Sixth target, 900 yards. Nearly invisible in the morning haze. She fired. 2 seconds later, the target fell. Total time, 34 seconds. She stood, safed the rifle, turned to face the recruits. 6 targets, 6 shots, 34 seconds. Now tell me, which one mattered most? Granger spoke up immediately. The 900-yard shot, ma'am. Longest range, hardest conditions. Wrong. The 400-yard shot then, closest threat. Wrong again. I don't understand. Ravenna pointed to the 800-yard target, the one partially obscured by the tree. That one. Target 5. Anyone know why? Silence. Look at the terrain. Target 5 had angle on the flank. If this were a real scenario, that position could have engaged my spotter, my team, anyone in supporting positions. The other targets were threats to me. Target 5 was a threat to everyone else. She looked at each recruit. Sniping isn't about showing off. It's not about longest shot or fastest time. It's about tactical priority, about understanding the battlefield, about protecting the people who depend on you. Target 5 wasn't the hardest shot, but it was the most important one. Private Thornton's eyes were wide. Ma'am, how did you know? How did you see that? Practice, observation, 22 years of learning to read terrain like a book, and understanding that every shot I don't take is just as important as every shot I do. Granger looked at her differently now. The skepticism had faded, replaced by something that might have been respect. "Permission to speak, ma'am." "Granted. I was wrong. About you. About this." "Yes, Corporal, you were. But that's okay. You're here to learn. So learn." She walked back toward the classroom, stopped, turned. "And Granger, if you ever disrespect one of the female recruits in this course, I will personally make the next 8 weeks the longest of your life. Not because I'm sensitive, but because I've watched good soldiers get driven out by people who thought they didn't belong. And I won't let that happen again. Clear?" "Crystal, ma'am." "Good. Class resumes in 10 minutes. As she walked away, Thornton turned to the other 2 women in the group. Both looked stunned. "Did that just happen?" one of them whispered. "Yeah," Thornton said. "Yeah, it did." For the first time since arriving at Fort Bragg, she felt like maybe, just maybe, she belonged. The weeks that followed established a rhythm. Mornings were classroom work, ballistics, windage, elevation, range estimation, atmospheric conditions, the mathematics of death delivered from distance. Ravenna taught with patience and precision, never rushing, never condescending. When someone didn't understand, she found another way to explain it. When someone struggled, she stayed late to help. Afternoons were practical exercises, starting at 300 yards, working their way up. Unlike most instructors who pushed speed and volume, Ravenna emphasized patience and precision. One shot, make it count. Trust why it hit or why it missed. Evenings were maintenance, cleaning rifles, checking equipment, learning to treat weapons like the precision instruments they were. And throughout it all, Ravenna told stories. Not about her own accomplishments, about the 11 men of Black Viper, about Marcus Flint, who could calculate windage adjustments faster than most people could read them, who wanted to teach history because he believed understanding the past prevented repeating its mistakes. About Wyatt Cross, who built houses with his hands and could shoot with either eye, left or right, with equal precision, who believed that warriors had a responsibility to build as much as they destroyed. About Dalton Reed, 19 years old, who wrote poetry between missions and once made a shot in complete darkness using only sound and instinct, who died asking someone to tell his mother he loved her. About 8 others, each one a name, a story, a reminder that behind every trigger pull was a human being who mattered. The recruits listened, at first out of courtesy, then out of respect, then out of genuine fascination. These weren't generic war stories. These were personal, intimate, told by someone who carried them like scripture. Week 4 brought the first crisis. Private Ivy Thornton, the young woman who'd asked about fear, had excelled in classroom work, perfect scores on every written exam, but on the range, something was wrong. Her first shots at 500 yards were solid, but as the distance increased, her accuracy fell apart. Not because of technical skill, because of something else. Morrison pulled Ravenna aside after the 4th day of Thornton missing targets she should have hit easily. "Your student's got the yips," he said. "Seen it before. Gets in their head. Starts overthinking. Pretty soon they can't hit anything." "I know," Ravenna said. "I'm working on it." "Work faster. She washes out. The other 2 women are going to think they can't make it either. And we need good female snipers. The ones who make it through are usually exceptional." "Sergeant, I'm aware of the stakes." Morrison studied her. "You see yourself in her, don't you?" "Maybe." "Then help her the way someone should have helped you." That evening, Ravenna found Thornton in the barracks. The young woman was sitting on her bunk, head in her hands, crying quietly. "Private." Thornton looked up, wiped her eyes quickly. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. I'll pull it together." "No, you won't. Not like this." Ravenna sat down on the opposite bunk. "Talk to me. What's happening when you shoot?" "I don't know. I look through the scope and I see the target, and I start thinking about what it represents, what it means, and I freeze. What does it represent? A person, Thornton's voice cracked. I know it's just steel, just a training target, but in my head, I see a person, with a family, with people who love them. And I think, what if I have to do this for real? What if I have to take a life? What if I can't? What if I freeze in combat and someone dies because of me? Ravenna nodded slowly. You want to know something private? What, ma'am? I never fired a shot in combat, not one. 3 years in Afghanistan, intelligence work, never pulled a trigger at another human being. Everything I learned on ranges like this, against paper and steel. Thornton looked up. But you're the best shot in the army. Technically, yes. But the best shot and the best warrior aren't the same thing. I can hit a target from a mile away, but I've never had to live with taking a life. Never had to carry that weight for real. She leaned forward. And you know what? That doesn't make me less of a sniper. It makes me a sniper who understands what that weight means before I ever have to carry it. I don't understand. The fact that you're thinking about this, that you're feeling this weight before you ever deploy, means you're exactly the kind of person who should be a sniper. Because you won't pull that trigger carelessly. You won't take a life unless you're absolutely certain it's necessary. And that certainty, that absolute commitment to making the right choice, is what separates good snipers from great ones. Thornton shook her head. But I'm missing targets. Easy targets. I'm failing. No, you're learning. There's a difference. Ravenna stood. Tomorrow morning, 0500, meet me at the range. Just you and me. We're going to work through this. Ma'am, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Because someone once told me that the person you think doesn't belong might be the one who saves your life someday. And I believe that. So let me help you believe it too. The next morning was cold, frost on the ground. The sun hadn't risen yet when Thornton arrived at the range. Ravenna was already there. 2 rifles laid out, thermoses of coffee, and 6 targets at various distances. Coffee first, Ravenna said, handing over a cup. Can't shoot if your hands are shaking from cold. They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the sky lighten, listening to birds wake up. Tell me about your family, Ravenna said finally. Ma'am? Your family, where you're from, what made you join the army? Thornton hesitated. Then, rural Virginia. My dad was a hunter, taught me to shoot when I was 8, deer mostly, some turkey. He died when I was 16, lung cancer. She sipped the coffee. I joined the army because I wanted to make him proud, wanted to use the skills he taught me for something that mattered. And now you're here. And now I'm here, failing. You're not failing, you're struggling. There's a difference. Ravenna set down her coffee. Your father taught you to hunt, to track, to wait, to take one perfect shot. That's good training, but it's different than military training. Hunting is about patience and respect for the animal. Military shooting is about tactical necessity, and your brain is trying to reconcile those two things. How do I do that? By understanding that they're not incompatible. By recognizing that the skills your father taught you, patience, respect, precision, are exactly what make a good sniper. You just need to reframe how you think about the target. How? Ravenna pointed downrange. See that target at 600 yards? Yes, ma'am. That's not a person. It's a threat to your team, to your mission, to the people depending on you. Your job isn't to kill for the sake of killing. It's to protect, to eliminate threats so that others can live. Does that change how you see it? Thornton considered this. Maybe, but what if I still can't do it? What if the moment comes and I freeze? Then you communicate that to your team. You tell them you can't take the shot, and someone else does. There's no shame in knowing your limits. Ravenna picked up a rifle. But I don't think you'll freeze. I think you're stronger than you know. You just need to prove it to yourself. How? Take this rifle. Put one round on that 600-yard target. Don't think about what it represents. Don't think about failure or success. Just think about the mechanics. Wind, distance, elevation. Make the bullet go where you intend. Nothing more, nothing less. Thornton took the rifle. It felt heavy in her hands, heavier than it had a week ago. She dropped prone, found the scope. The target swam into view, and immediately the doubt came. What if I miss? What if I can't do this? What if... Private, Ravenna's voice cut through the noise in her head. Stop thinking. Start breathing. Thornton closed her eyes. Breathe. 4 counts in. Hold. 4 counts out. Opened her eyes. The target was just steel. Just a shape. Just physics and mathematics and precision. She made the adjustments. Wind was minimal this morning, 5 miles per hour from the east. That meant 0.8 minutes of angle. Distance was 600 yards. Elevation was 7.2 minutes up. She settled into the rifle, found that still place, the place her father had shown her in the Virginia woods, where the only things that existed were breath and heartbeat in the space between. Squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked. 2 seconds later, clang! Hit, center mass. Thornton exhaled, felt something release in her chest, something that had been wound tight for weeks. Again, Ravenna said. She fired again. Hit. Again. Hit. Again. Hit. 5 shots, 5 hits, all center mass. When Thornton stood up, she was crying, but this time the tears felt different. Not fear, relief. You did it, Ravenna said. I don't know what happened. Something just clicked. No, you stopped fighting yourself, started trusting your training. That's all shooting is, trust. She squeezed Thornton's shoulder. You're going to be fine, Private. Better than fine. You're going to be exceptional. How do you know? Because you care. And people who care put in the work. And people who put in the work become great. She smiled. Plus, your father taught you well. I can see it in how you handle the rifle. He'd be proud. Thornton broke down completely then. Ravenna held her while she sobbed. While weeks of fear and doubt and pressure poured out. While the sun rose over Fort Bragg and turned the frost to dew and made everything new again. When it was over, Thornton wiped her eyes. Thank you, ma'am. Don't thank me, thank your father. He's the one who gave you the foundation. I just helped you remember how to use it. They packed up the rifles, walked back to the barracks together, and for the first time since arriving at Fort Bragg, Ivy Thornton felt like maybe she could do this. Maybe she could carry the weight. Maybe she belonged after all. Word spread fast. By week 5, everyone knew that Instructor Blackwood had saved Thornton, that she'd stayed late, came in early, worked one-on-one until the problem was solved, that she cared about her students not just as soldiers, but as people. The change in the class was visible. Recruits who'd been skeptical became devoted. Granger, the corporal who'd questioned her qualifications, became her most ardent defender. When a new recruit made a disparaging comment about female instructors, Granger shut it down so fast the kid didn't know what hit him. You don't talk about Instructor Blackwood that way, he'd said, voice hard as iron. She's the real deal, and if you're smart, you'll shut up and learn everything she's willing to teach. The 3 female recruits formed a tight unit. Thornton, a woman named Rodriguez from Texas, another named Foster from Michigan. They pushed each other, supported each other, and consistently placed in the top 5 of every evaluation. Morrison watched it all with satisfaction. You're doing good work, he told Ravenna one afternoon. Best class I've seen in 10 years. Attitude's good. Skills are developing faster than usual. And the women are thriving. They're doing the work, Sergeant. I'm just guiding. Don't sell yourself short. What you're building here is special. These recruits are going to graduate with a completely different mindset than previous classes. Less ego, more teamwork, better understanding of what this job actually means. Ravenna watched her students on the range. 22 recruits who'd started as strangers and skeptics, now functioning like a unit, helping each other, celebrating successes, learning from failures. Sergeant, can I ask you something? Shoot. Did you think I'd fail when I first got here? Morrison considered this. Honestly? Yeah, I thought you'd wash out in the first week. Thought you were just another academy kid who looked good on paper but couldn't hack the reality. He smiled. I've never been happier to be wrong. What changed your mind? The day you finally shot, that first round at 300 yards, you missed 4 times and hit once, but that one hit was perfect. And I realized you weren't missing because you couldn't shoot. You were missing because you were learning to live with what shooting meant. And once you figured that out, there was no stopping you. My father says the hardest shot is always the first one. Your father's right, and you know what? You're proving that every day with these recruits, teaching them that strength isn't about never being afraid, it's about being afraid and doing it anyway. Ravenna nodded, didn't trust herself to speak. Morrison clapped her on the shoulder. Keep it up, instructor. You're making history here. Week 8 arrived like a deadline. Graduation was Friday. Final qualifications were Monday through Thursday. Each recruit had to pass a series of increasingly difficult shots. 300 yards prone, 500 yards sitting, 700 yards standing with improvised rest, 900 yards prone with spotter. By Thursday evening, all 22 recruits had passed. Every single one. It was the first time in Fort Bragg history that an entire class had graduated without a single washout. The accomplishment was so unusual that Captain Steele called a special formation. This, he announced to the assembled class, has never happened before. Usually we lose 30 to 40%, but you 22 decided to make me look good by all passing. He smiled. Your instructor wants to say a few words. Ravenna stepped forward, looked at the faces watching her. These weren't skeptical recruits anymore. They were snipers, professionals, people who understood the weight they'd chosen to carry. When I started teaching this class 3 months ago, I was terrified, she began. Terrified that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't know enough, that you wouldn't respect me. And honestly, some of you didn't, not at first. A few chuckles. But over these weeks, I watched you grow, watched you struggle and overcome, watched you help each other, support each other, become a team. And that's what made the difference. Not individual talent, not natural ability, but the willingness to work together, to lift each other up, to understand that we're stronger united than divided. She paused. I want to tell you about 11 men. Some of you have heard their names already, but I'm going to tell you again because their story matters, because their sacrifice made me possible, and me being here made you possible. And you being here will make the next generation possible. That's how legacy works. That's how we honor the dead. She told them about Black Viper, about Desert Storm, about a mission that went wrong and 11 men who died trying to do the right thing, about a father who survived and a daughter who carried their names forward, about how weight shared is weight that becomes bearable. When she finished, the formation was silent. Then Corporal Granger raised his hand. Ma'am, I speak for everyone here when I say, thank you for teaching us, for believing in us, for showing us what it means to be a sniper, not just technically, but morally, ethically, completely. You're welcome, Corporal. And ma'am, we'd like to make a request. What's that? We want to dedicate this graduation class to Black Viper, to those 11 men. We want their names on the class plaque. We want their legacy to continue through us. Ravenna felt her throat close, couldn't speak. Captain Steele stepped forward. That's highly unusual, but given the circumstances, I'll allow it. Class 24-3 will be dedicated to the 11 operators of Black Viper, Desert Storm, 1991. Their names will be engraved on the permanent class plaque in the Hall of Honor. The formation erupted in applause. Ravenna turned away so they wouldn't see her crying. Friday morning dawned, clear and bright. Graduation ceremony was scheduled for 1000 hours. Families had arrived. Parents, siblings, spouses, children. The parade ground was packed with over 300 people. Ravenna stood at the back in her dress uniform, watching. Her father stood beside her. Colonel Blackwood in his Class A uniform, chest full of ribbons, the black viper patch prominent. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified." "Why? They already graduated. The hard part's over." "Not for me. I have to give the commencement address." He smiled. "You've been giving speeches for 12 weeks. What's one more?" "This one matters." They all mattered, but yes, this one's special. He looked at the families gathered, at the 22 recruits standing in formation. "You know what I see when I look at them?" "What?" "Hope. 11 men died in Iraq, but their legacy created you. And you created 22 snipers who understand what responsibility means, who will train others, who will pass on what they've learned. That's not tragedy, that's transformation." "Do you really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, the past 33 years were meaningless, and I refuse to accept that." The ceremony began. Captain Steele gave opening remarks. Morrison presented awards. Distinguished Graduate, Top Shot, Best Tactical Awareness, Expert Marksman. Private Ivy Thornton received Distinguished Graduate. The young woman who'd almost washed out, who'd broken down and rebuilt herself, who'd learned to carry the weight. When she accepted her award, she looked directly at Ravenna and mouthed, "Thank you." Then it was time for the commencement address. Ravenna walked to the podium. 300 people fell silent. She'd prepared remarks, practiced them, but standing there, looking at those faces, the prepared words evaporated. She spoke from the heart instead. "I wasn't supposed to be here. When I arrived at Fort Bragg 9 months ago, I was a failure. I couldn't shoot, wouldn't shoot, spent weeks as the class joke. The instructor's daughter who couldn't pull a trigger. People bet on when I'd quit, how long I'd last, whether I had what it takes." She looked at her father. He nodded. "But I didn't quit, because I was carrying something heavier than doubt, heavier than mockery. I was carrying the names of 11 men who died before I was born. Marcus Flint, Wyatt Cross, Dalton Reed. 8 others whose sacrifice planted seeds that took decades to bloom." The crowd was motionless. "Those men taught me, through my father, that being a warrior isn't about violence. It's about responsibility. It's about understanding the weight of every decision. It's about making sure that when you pull that trigger, you can live with what comes after. And that lesson, that understanding, is what I tried to pass on to these 22 graduates." She gestured to the formation. "Look at them, 22 snipers who could hit a target from 1,000 yards. But more importantly, 22 people who understand what that capability means, who won't use it carelessly, who will protect instead of destroy, who will carry forward a legacy that started in Iraq in 1991 and continues here today." Her voice strengthened. "People ask me, what makes a good sniper? Is it accuracy? Is it nerve? Is it physical capability?" And I tell them, no. A good sniper is someone who feels the weight before they pull the trigger, who understands that every shot changes them, who carries their decisions with honor and humility, who brings everyone home." She paused. "These 22 graduates are good snipers, not because I taught them how to shoot, but because they learned how to carry the weight. And that's the greatest honor I could ask for. To watch them grow, to see them succeed, to know that 11 men who died in the desert are finally being honored by a generation that understands what their sacrifice meant." She stepped back from the podium. "Class 24-3, you are the legacy of Black Viper. You are the proof that sacrifice is never meaningless, that honor transcends death, that the best warriors are the ones who fight to protect, not to destroy. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. Your families are proud of you. And somewhere, 11 men are watching. And they're proud too. The applause was deafening. But Ravenna barely heard it. She was looking at the class plaque being unveiled beside the stage. Polished bronze, 22 names of graduates. And above them, engraved in letters that caught the morning sun, dedicated to Black Viper, Desert Storm, 1991. 11 heroes who made this legacy possible. Beneath that, 11 names: Marcus Flint, Wyatt Cross, Dalton Reed, 8 others. Finally recognized, finally honored, finally remembered not as casualties, but as teachers. Colonel Blackwood appeared at her side, put his arm around her shoulders. "You did it," he whispered. "You made them immortal." "No," Ravenna said, tears streaming down her face. "They did. I just helped people remember." After the ceremony, families swarmed the graduates. Handshakes, hugs, photographs. Joy that comes from watching someone you love succeed at something difficult. Ravenna stood to the side, letting them have their moment. This wasn't about her. It was about them. But one by one, the graduates found her anyway. Granger, the skeptic who became a believer. "Ma'am, I'm going to train the way you trained us, with respect, with patience, with understanding. Thank you for showing me a better way." Thornton, the one who almost quit. "Ma'am, my dad would have loved you. You taught me what he tried to teach me, that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about being afraid and shooting anyway." Rodriguez, Foster, the other women. "Ma'am, thank you for proving we belong, for showing us that gender doesn't matter, that skill and heart do." One by one, 22 graduates, 22 thank yous, 22 promises to carry forward what they'd learned. By the time the last one had spoken, the sun was high and hot, and the parade ground was emptying. Morrison found Ravenna sitting on a bench, exhausted but content. "Hell of a day," he said. "Hell of a day," she agreed. "You know what happens now, right?" "What?" "You become a legend. Youngest instructor. First all-graduate class. That shot you made. Word's already spreading. Other bases are calling, asking if you'll come train their instructors. Media wants interviews. The whole 9 yards." Ravenna's expression darkened. "I don't want that." "I know, but it's coming anyway. Price of success." "Then I'll decline, all of it. I'm not here for recognition. I'm here to teach, to honor the 11, to make sure their sacrifice continues to matter." Morrison studied her. "You really believe that, don't you? That this is all about them?" "It is." "No," he shook his head. "It was, when you started. But now it's about you too. About what you've built, what you've created. Those 22 graduates, they're not just carrying Black Viper's legacy, they're carrying yours." Ravenna didn't respond, just looked at the empty parade ground where, hours ago, 22 snipers had stood. "Maybe," she said finally, "but if they are, I hope they carry it better than I did." "Impossible," Morrison said. "You carried it perfectly." 1 year later, Fort Bragg, September 2025. Ravenna stood in front of another class. 40 recruits this time. Word had spread. Sniper candidates were requesting her course specifically. Some had waited months for a slot. 40 recruits, 32 men. 8 women. The number of women had tripled. She wrote on the board, "The best sniper isn't the one with the most kills. It's the one who brings everyone home." Turned to face them. "My name is Instructor Blackwood. For the next 8 weeks, I will teach you how to shoot, how to think, and if you're very lucky, how to survive what comes after." One hand went up, a young woman. Couldn't have been more than 21. "Ma'am, I have a question." "Go ahead." "Is it true you made a shot from over 1,000 yards? Moving target? With 1 bullet?" "Yes," murmurs through the classroom. "Is it true you trained 22 snipers and every single one graduated?" "Yes." Is it true you're related to Colonel Blackwood, the Black Viper survivor? He's my father, the young woman smiled. Then I'm in the right place. Why's that? Because my brother graduated your first class, Corporal Hawthorne. He told me that if I was serious about being a sniper, there was only one instructor worth training under. He said you didn't just teach shooting, you taught what it means to be a warrior. And that's what I want to learn. Ravenna felt something warm spread through her chest. Not pride, something better, something that felt like purpose. Then welcome, she said. Let's begin. Outside in the Hall of Honor, the bronze plaque gleamed. Class 24-3, 22 names, dedicated to Black Viper. Next to it, a new plaque was being mounted. Class 25-2, 40 names. And above that, being carefully engraved by a technician, in honor of instructor Ravenna Blackwood, who proved that the greatest legacy is teaching others to carry the weight. But Ravenna would never see it, because she was in the classroom, doing what she was born to do, teaching, honoring, making sure that 11 men who died in Iraq would never, ever be forgotten. And somewhere, in whatever place warriors go when they leave this world, Marcus Flint and Wyatt Cross and Dalton Reed and 8 others watched and smiled, because their sacrifice hadn't been meaningless after all. It had created something beautiful, something that would outlive them all, a legacy of precision, of honor, of responsibility, a legacy that started in the desert and bloomed in the heart of a girl who never knew them, but carried them anyway, forever.